My wife divorced me because she claimed I was holding her back from her career opportunities. She finally got a promotion after leaving me. Then I became CEO of the company that rejected her application. That's when she realized I'd been the one supporting her success all along. Hello Reddit I+ here. I am 41 now. And this is the story of how my marriage collapsed. How my ex tried to build her identity around a narrative that wasn't real, and how life pulled the ultimate plot twist on her. Back when I was 28, I went to a national business leadership summit in Denver. That is where I met a woman named Mara, who was 26 at the time, and worked in brand strategy for a regional food distribution company. I was in supply chain coordination for an industrial equipment manufacturer. We met during a group workshop where we had to build a fictional company from scratch. She immediately took over the brainstorming session, assigning roles, rearranging ideas, trying to pitch herself as a natural leader. I found the energy impressive, even if it was a bit intense. By lunch, she had invited me to join her table and spent the entire meal talking about how she planned to become a head of marketing for a national firm by the time she hit 35. I liked her ambition, even though it was loud and relentless. Unlike her, I didn't talk much about my career plans. I preferred letting my work speak for itself, but she said she liked that I had a calm energy that grounded her. We dated for 2 years and got married shortly after. She kept her last name because she said she had spent too long building it professionally to give it up. I respected it. The early years of our marriage were basically two people in separate orbits. She was always at some networking event, leadership seminar, or panel discussion. I spent long hours building trust with suppliers and optimizing workflows. Still, we made it work. I cooked most nights, kept the house in shape, and listened whenever she came home venting about workplace politics. 3 years in, I got promoted to operations lead. It was a big milestone for me, and she congratulated me, but I could tell she didn't like that my career was moving faster than hers. She had been expecting a bump to senior brand strategist, but had been passed over twice. She blamed her company for bias and favoritism. I encouraged her to hang in there or explore new opportunities. She refused to switch companies because it would reset her trajectory. Around this time, she became obsessed with optics. She needed me at every mixer. She said having a high-performing partner boosted her credibility. At home, I hosted dinners for her colleagues, cooking for a dozen people and creating an atmosphere she said would signal leadership readiness. Meanwhile, she crafted seating arrangements and conversational maps like it was a war strategy. By year 5, I was offered a director-level position. It required a ton of travel. She insisted I take it because at least one of us needed to move upward quickly. I did, and within 2 years I became head of operations for the Western region. She finally got promoted to senior strategist, but she was annoyed it had taken until she was 32. She wanted director level by 30. Every day became a comparison game between her and her former grad school peers. Then she was passed over again. The director role she wanted went to a younger candidate who had only been with the company half as long. She spiraled. She said the world undervalued her. She said she was surrounded by people too small-minded to recognize greatness. And then she turned the blame toward me. She told me I was diluting her drive because I needed too much emotional connection. I was stunned. We barely saw each other most weeks. She said my presence made her feel responsible for a household, and that high-performing women needed total independence. She also began insulting the way I managed my own career. She said my promotions weren't the result of talent, but because I was safe and agreeable. She said real executives had to be sharp and intimidating. I worked hard to not take it personally, but I am human. Hearing someone dismiss years of late nights and tight deadlines as luck hurts more than I can explain. Then, the bomb dropped. Around our 9th anniversary, she told me the marriage was holding her back and she wanted out. She said she couldn't achieve her best self with a partner in the picture. She wanted to be untethered so she could focus entirely on reaching the top. I suggested counseling. She laughed and said counseling was for people who still believed in the relationship. She had already spoken to an attorney. The divorce happened quickly since we kept finances separate and did not have children. She moved into a luxury apartment, started posting motivational quotes about choosing yourself, and finalized everything in a matter of months. My family and friends were confused. They said I had been the most supportive spouse imaginable, but she didn't want support. She wanted a narrative where she was the hero battling imaginary obstacles. 4 months later, I heard she had been promoted to marketing director. She posted a long, self-praising LinkedIn essay about how removing distractions had given her clarity. She didn't name me, but the implication was obvious. Ending the marriage had unlocked her potential. People sent me screenshots. I felt embarrassed, even though I hadn't done anything wrong. She had built her story around the idea that I had been the problem. Life works in strange ways, though. Just weeks after that, I got a message from a recruiter representing a tech firm called LumaNexus. They were looking for someone to take over as CEO and rebuild the entire operating structure. I didn't see myself as CEO material, but he insisted I was exactly what the board needed. I went through interviews for nearly 2 months. The board loved my operational turnaround record and my ability to build trust within teams. They didn't want a flashy strategist. They wanted someone who understood the heartbeat of the company. When the offer came, I accepted. My old colleagues were shocked, but proud. What made everything surreal was what I learned later. Before I officially took the role, I reviewed hiring histories and internal documentation for consistency. That was when I accidentally discovered that LumaNexus had previously rejected an applicant with a familiar last name. It was Mara. She had applied for a leadership position about a year before our divorce. They had dismissed her application because her portfolio didn't show strategic impact. The recruiter had written that she relied too heavily on buzzwords and lacked real results. I never told her I knew, but 2 months into my new job, she found out on her own. Someone from her network told her I was the new CEO of the company that once turned her down. The woman who said I held her back. The woman who said I was diluting her greatness. The woman who divorced me to become unrestricted suddenly sent me a text congratulating me, acting like nothing had happened. She added that she always knew I had potential to be something big. I never replied. I didn't need validation anymore. Sometimes the universe tells stories better than any of us can. About 3 weeks after I ignored her congratulatory text, my ex-wife, Mara, started posting strangely nostalgic things on her social platforms. Nothing direct, but absolutely targeted. She put up a long reflection about how some relationships end before you realize their true value, and how successful people sometimes sacrifice too much chasing titles. She even mentioned that supportive partners deserve appreciation even after separation. Everyone who knew us instantly realized she was trying to pivot her public narrative. The same friends who had sent me screenshots of her previous posts now sent me these new ones, laughing at how fast her tone had changed. She had built her entire identity around this story that she had soared once she freed herself from her constraints. But the second she realized I hadn't collapsed, hadn't begged, hadn't spiraled, and instead had become CEO, suddenly the constraints were adorable. I kept quiet. I didn't owe her anything. Then things escalated. 2 months into my tenure, our HR chief came to me privately and said someone had submitted an application for a senior brand leadership role. The name was familiar. Too familiar. Mara had applied to my company again. This time she had attached a 4-page cover letter about how her renewed clarity, resilience, and commitment to excellence had made her a stronger leader. She also included a paragraph about understanding the internal culture of LumaNexus through mutual connections. My HR chief wasn't aware I had any connection to her. She simply flagged it because something in the application felt off. Not only had Mara exaggerated her accomplishments again, she had listed me as someone she had collaborated with professionally during periods of strategic alignment. I stared at that sentence for a long time. I had never collaborated with her professionally. Our industries had never overlapped. She was trying to turn our marriage into a resume bullet point. My HR chief asked politely if I had any insight on her. I kept it professional and said she wasn't a viable candidate for the role and should not be invited to interview. We rejected her within a week. That alone would have been awkward enough, but she didn't stop there. About 10 days later, she messaged me again. This time she wrote a long apology. She said she had been harsh in the past, that career pressure had made her say hurtful things, and that she now understood how much I contributed to her stability. She also mentioned that since I was in a position of influence now, she hoped we could put differences aside as professionals. I didn't answer. Another week passed, and she escalated again. She showed up in the lobby of LumaNexus. She didn't have a meeting. She didn't have an appointment. She just walked up to reception and said she wanted to congratulate me in person. Security contacted our executive assistant, who reached out to me with confusion written all over her voice. I told them to politely let her know I couldn't meet, and that she'd need to schedule through proper channels in the future. She left within minutes. That evening, she posted a very dramatic update online about how sometimes the past and present collide in unexpected ways, and how true leadership requires compassion even when others do not understand your vision. People in our old social circle sent me that post too, with comments like, "She's spiraling. What is she even talking about? She used to say you were holding her back, and now she's praising your leadership." The turning point came a few days later. A board member forwarded me an article Mara had written on her personal blog. In the article, she implied that she and I were finding common ground again as professionals, that we were healing after years of misunderstanding, and that future collaborations weren't off the table. The board member simply asked, "Is there anything we should know about an existing professional relationship here?" I had to set the record straight, calmly, professionally, factually. I explained that we were divorced, had no professional history, and that she was not someone I wanted involved with the company in any capacity. The board member apologized for the awkwardness and reassured me that they fully respected boundaries. Still, it felt surreal that I even had to say any of this out loud. The final straw came 2 weeks later when she tried to reach out again. She wrote that she wanted closure, that she wanted to resolve old emotions, and that seeing me rise higher than she predicted had made her reflect on her behavior. She ended by saying she would love a chance to talk privately and rebuild a healthier dynamic. I finally answered. I wrote a short, direct message stating that I didn't wish to revisit the past, that I had moved on, and that any further communication needed to remain strictly formal and only if absolutely necessary. She didn't reply, but she deleted almost all of her old posts that blamed me for holding her career back. Then she deleted the post about removing distractions from her life, then the one about unlocking her potential through divorce. She even deleted the essay that credited her promotion to choosing herself. Slowly, she removed every piece of the story she had built about me being an obstacle. She didn't replace them with anything new. It was like her entire online persona had been stitched together with inconsistencies, and once the biggest piece got ripped out, the whole thing unraveled. So that brings me to now. I'm focusing on my work. My team trusts me. The board is supportive. I am building something real, something meaningful. And my ex-wife, who once said I was the reason she wasn't an executive, is suddenly very quiet. Funny how people rewrite their past until reality corrects them.